I try not to.
Okay, here we go.
We're supposed to
Yep.
talk about talking.
Yeah, I know. What is the topic tonight? What's the topic tonight?
Silence.
Silence. Okay, so for the next hour, let's just sit here
Right.
and try not to laugh at each other or something like that. Yeah, isn't that interesting? And the point that the author makes is that this is and if you take a look, I don't know if anybody picked up a copy of the actual letter. It's interesting because, as they say, talkativeness and silence, that's it. So I think as he was going on, he kind of realized his own deficits and decided to cut it short. But that's the topic today. So talkativeness and silence, and this is interesting. I like this topic because this is also the topic of our. Did I bring that other book? I thought I did. No. Of our compassion in action. So I wanted to bring that. I thought I threw that book in. The Henri Nouwen book that we use. I don't know. Anyways, no, you guys have it. So there's a book I wanted to talk about. That's a good study. It's very thin. It's Henri Nouwen, and he is he's a Dutch Roman Catholic priest, but he's very very orthodox and very very good. This was written, I think, probably in the 40s or the 50s, but he wrote a whole series about this, and I'll try to remember to bring it next time. Wish I would. Man, it bothers me because this is something that's very very interesting, because the whole concept of silence and listening is what the CIA is based around. The whole concept of being a silent presence as opposed to being a noisy presence. And he has a real good study in there about silence and the benefits of silence. And the point that he was making is that the society that we live in is a noisy society, right? I mean, think about that. I mean, I always have a problem if I call somebody and I'm trying to talk to them, and there's like the TV or something going on in the background loudly. There's a radio or music going on very loudly. Sometimes I'm yelling at the phone, trying to talk to them and stuff, when we're yelling back and forth because they have all this background noise going. There's some people, I mean, not judging, but there's some people who just can't stand silence, quiet. Yeah, driving in the car too. That's another place. I mean, a lot of times I just I'll have the road reports on because I work in Detroit, but a lot of times I'll just shut that off. It's just like, man, there's just too much noise, And that's the world we live in. And the point is that Father Nouwen was making was that because of all the noise, the value of our words are depreciated. All right. So it's almost like a supply and demand, right? If there is fewer these kind of phones out there, the value of those phones go up because everybody wants one, or enough people want one that they're going to drive the value, the price of that up. Now, if somebody comes by and just dumps all these phones on the market, everybody has one who wants one. Pretty soon, these things are, $10 or something like that, if that much. They'll be using, underneath the tables to level them off or something like that. But they won't have any real value. It's the same thing with words as well. So the more words, and he's not talking just the spoken words either. He's talking about written words too. You think about billboards. When you're driving around and all the stuff on the billboards. All of the different things that we can read, all the print media. Nowadays it's kind of hard sometimes to find a newspaper because that newspaper is taken out of print, right? Because they have new media. But are there any fewer words out there? No. Just, go out to Facebook or wherever it is, or blogs or something like that, and you get all kinds of words.
Everybody's got something to say.
Oh yeah, everybody's got something to say. And everyone's to me, seems kind of critical. I am very, very, ever since the beginning, I have never been one to really post. So people keep saying, well, I don't see anything about you on Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that. I don't, because I've seen so many people slogged by the trolls, mercilessly, for things that, I kind of understand. I'll read something going, that's a little goofy, but okay. But next thing you know, someone's got, poison. It's just, or if you say something, if you make a statement, and you just want to make a statement, even a throwaway comment, and pretty soon someone's attacking you for it. So I guess if you're gonna go on social media, and make a statement, whatever it happens to be, about Christ, about God, or something like that, get ready for some of the wackiest stuff to come out from under the bridge and start attacking you and suddenly making it personal and very hateful, right? A surplus of words. Maybe people have so many words that they need to get rid of that they have to go out there and attack people on it. And so it's very interesting. So as we're on that topic, as we're working with the CIA, the idea is to, this thing, listen and let people talk. And it's really amazing because when I first heard about it, I heard about CIA at the ministry conference, Parish Life Conference or something like that in Virginia. It was a few years back, maybe 3 or 4 years back. And I heard about it and I thought, what a concept. Something to me was totally different because everybody else wants you to go out and feed the poor, house the homeless, clothe them, pay their bills, teach them about Jesus, all this other stuff. And I thought, well, that's good. That's all good stuff. But everybody's doing it. Some people are doing it very well, and not just Orthodox, but a lot of Protestants, Cell Army, those places, they're doing an excellent job at it. Doesn't mean we shouldn't, but if we're looking at trying to, make the most, make the most out of what we have and what we can do, maybe there's another niche that we can find that we, as Orthodox Christians, can bring the presence of Christ in there, silently, and just sit and listen. And to kind of get that going at first is a little tough because again you feel you have to fill the void. Yeah. But what I found is if I do just shut up and just kind of nod, pretty soon they'll fill the void for you, and you start learning more and more. And in the end, they're learning more about themselves. And the funny thing is, a lot of times they'll say, "Thanks for stopping by and talking to me," or "Thank you for listening to me," or "Thank you for all the advice." It's like you didn't have to do anything. They were the ones. But because of all the talking and all the noise, a lot of times people can't discern who's actually doing the talking and who's doing the listening. And they feel that is therapeutic because, like we talked about, they had a human to talk at, not necessarily even talk with, but to talk at. And, that makes them feel better. It's very therapeutic and very refreshing for them. And they feel that they have actually gotten something out of that encounter. Father.
I can't stay, but I wanted to come and say hello. I've been here all day and I've got a bunch of packing and stuff to do, so pray for me on my trip.
Oh, I will.
Thank you.
I closed your trunk. I hope that was okay.
It was open?
Yes.
It didn't rain here.
Oh.
So I a lot of times I don't do that because then I find out someone's either putting something in and say, well, yeah, thanks for closing my keys.
I bump it all the time, so.
Oh, okay, that's okay.
That's my fault, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll
Sure.
talk to you later. I have other things.
Okay. Get packed.
Yeah, because tomorrow's my last day.
Uh-oh, get out of here. Enjoy your time.
Well, we'll see you. Thank you.
God willing, yep, take care.
Sorry to ditch you.
Oh, that's okay. We'll make it somehow.
Do you want coffee or?
Yeah, we got coffee and there's water for tea, so go ahead and grab up. Actually,
Maybe I'll do a tea.
the coffee's decaf, so maybe I'll do some of that. So yes, that's the thing that I found, and that was the lesson that really was talking about silence. And he also kind of talked about silence in preaching, not just presence ministries and things like that, but taking the moment to shut up. And that's kind of where we're going with this lesson today from St. John. I guess a good place to start is why silence? So he starts out talking about silence and the value of silence and all those other things. But why silence? What is the value? I mean, monastics practice it, so we have to too, right?
Well, all I know from I don't want to say it. That's
No, go ahead.
It's recorded.
Oh,
I just
okay.
feel like every time I open my mouth, I sin.
You what?
I sin.
Oh, aha, yeah. So I wonder why. So, and that's a very good point, and that's something that he does bring up too. We talk about that, about guarding the gate. I mean, when we do the pre-sanctified liturgy, remember the when we're kneeling and we're doing the, should never bring up anything I'm not prepared to. So one of the verses is guard the gates of my mouth. All right, because that is where so much trouble seems to stay. And for me too. I mean, so, and we talk about that too. He talks about that here. For me, a lot of times I call them throwaway comments. You know, just kind of nothing. Not intended to be rude, not intended to be mean, not even really intended to be funny. Just kind of throwaway comment. Just kind of, you know, maybe to fill the air with noise. I don't know. But a lot of times people will take that and they'll go, oh, you know what Mike said? He said this about, you know, it's like, no, it was not intended to be bad. But in retrospect, if I would have just kept my mouth shut, then I wouldn't have even said something that someone would have a chance to misinterpret. Now, sometimes you do have to say things, right? If we see somebody sinning, now we can say, you know, don't be a Budinsky and everything like that. But if we see a sin, then we need to call that sin out, right? We don't call that person out necessarily. We don't turn around and say, you know, look at you, sinner. Look at what you're doing. You're a rotten person. But, you know, we should be able to call that out. And they should be able to take it, hopefully, in the love and in the kindness and the Christian spirit that is being offered, if it is being offered in Christian spirit. Now, some people, you know, you're saying, well, gee, I don't think that was a good thing to do. You know, maybe you said something or did something to somebody that upset them. Maybe that wasn't a good thing to do. Leave it at that. So that's none of your business. You don't know anything about it. Cool. You don't have to get in an argument with them. A lot of times maybe they'll take that away and go, ooh, gee, maybe that was a wrong thing, you know. Because a lot of times we have that snap reaction that we have to react to it. Defend ourselves, right? Our pride, we keep talking about that all the time. That pride gets in the way. And that's one of the things that always comes up. So, and that's something too, when he talks about chatty people like me. So I'm here on the beginning. Step 11, we're already on step 11, talkativeness and silence. Talkativeness is the throne of vainglory on which it loves to preen itself and show off. Talkativeness is a sign of ignorance, a doorway to slander, a leader of jesting, a servant of lies, a ruin of compunction, a sermoner of despondency, a messenger of sleep, a dissipation of recollection, the end of vigilance, the cooling of zeal, the darkening of prayer. Intelligent silence is the mother of prayer, freedom from bondage, custodian of zeal, a guard on our thoughts, a friend of tears, a sure recollection of death. Ooh, there's that D word again. A companion of stillness, the opponent of dogmatism, a growth of knowledge, a hand to shape contemplation, hidden progress, and secret journey upward. Wow. So what do you think he feels about talkativeness as opposed to intelligent silence? Now, you notice here, he's talking about intelligent silence, because before, he's saying what? If somebody upsets you, what should you do?
You should say something.
Yeah, you should say something, right? So that's certainly not being silent. He says, come right out and call them out. You made me angry because of this, or you did this and this upset me. He says it's better to do that than, you know, remember he was talking about this. Yeah, exactly. And let it burn inside there and then play it over and over again. And then pretty soon that goes from lack of forgiveness to, he talks about the whole thing, bringing it right up into slander that we talked about. All those things because somewhere down the line you couldn't, for whatever reason, didn't call somebody out for something that really hurt you. Now, I know maybe it's more cultural. I've heard it called cultural or something like that, where if somebody hurts you, you're supposed to, buck up. Just take it. Don't worry about it. Ignore it. Let it roll off. Good and bad there, I guess. It depends if some people can do it and just put it completely behind them.
It depends on if that's really what you're doing, or if
Right.
you're just doing it.
Exactly.
Because if you're able to do that, then that is a good thing.
Yeah, good for you.
If you're not able to do that, then you're not doing it. So
Yeah.
you need to go ahead and
Yeah, maybe
bring
that's
it
not
out.
working too well for you. Yeah, so maybe
some of us are too sensitive to just take it and buck up and move on.
Sure.
It hurts too much, and you just have to say, listen, I feel really hurt by that.
Yeah.
And this is why I feel this way. And then it's up to them what they do with the information you give
Exactly.
them.
Now,
But at least you got it out.
and what else do you need to
can
do?
Forgive them and move on.
Forgive them and move
Yeah, and
on.
not expect them to necessarily fix it because they
Right.
How can you take back words? You
can't.
say something that even in jest, something just really rude or crude or something like that, and I know I'm the worst person for that, and then you say, gosh, that was such a stupid thing. And even if you go back and say, I'm so sorry, that came out wrong, I didn't intend it, they could say, I forgive you, but a lot of times for me, I have a hard time forgiving myself because I keep playing it back and keep going, what the heck was I not thinking of when I said that, or when I did that? Or what, was I really that mad at that person that I had to, bring that up or make that personal or something like that? And it just, and sometimes it's just something not intended even. But I said it and I went, that was a stupid thing to say at that time. I thought it would be funny, or I thought it would add to the conversation or something like that. Again, having to make some words, and boom, foot and mouth, and then, you apologize. I'm sure probably most of the people say, oh, either I don't remember it, maybe out of kindness, or they do forgive you. But for me, I keep remembering it because to me, it bothers me. You try to, and again, that's partially pride, because I like to think of myself as being smart enough not to do stupid stuff that would intentionally hurt somebody, right? You think, well, I'm a good person, I'm smart enough not to say something or do something, or neglect to say something or do something that could intentionally hurt somebody. So for me, it's a pride thing, I'm sure, that I've missed the mark, and even though the person either didn't hear it, didn't understand it, or really did truly forgive me, I have a hard time with myself sometimes playing it back.
Yeah,
So
it feels like to me that it's pride. It always goes back to pride.
in
We're
that,
very prideful people, we're just, Adam and Eve, it started there.
I mean, it's human. It's human, and some pride is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But as he says, when it comes vainglory, that's the word they usually apply to it. Vain glory, because it's all in vain. It's all for me, right? You can have pride. You can be proud. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being proud of our church here.
Yeah.
All right, you've been here for some years. We've seen it come from a hole in the ground to a nice building, being built up. I think as a parish we did very well surviving that change. A lot of parishes don't do too well with that. Now we have a new priest. It looks like he's kind of getting in the swing of things, and a lot of stuff happening. So there's a lot to be proud of. But again, it can't be vainglory, because all of it, like the tornado that swept through here before the building was built and knocked down all the trees. A tornado can come in, and one Sunday we can come over here and this building can be gone. Be gone. And all the beautiful things, all the nice stuff we did, in an instant is gone. We got a river out there. Thank God, about the highest it's been is right out to the shrine of the Theotokos. Hopefully she'll hold the water back. But I mean, who knows? I mean, it could be, look at Texas and places like that. Creeks and rivers that never overflowed are now washing people and cars away. So, it's good to be proud, because it gives us a feeling of a sense of accomplishment. Also, it gives us kind of sort of a reason to go on, right? Because you have that proud feeling and you want to build on that. You want to continue to feel good about that. So there's nothing wrong with that. But when it becomes like a bunch of chest beating and all this other stuff, and the whole thing is like, look what I did. I did this, I did that. This is my church because I did this, and this. Then you got to kind of step back for a minute and say, okay, well, what would happen if all that went away? Whether it's your church, your house, your job, or anything.
Then you're crushed.
Yeah, you're crushed. You're lost, right? Because this is your identity. This is your pride. This is what you're all about, is what just happened here, what is going on now, what I have done. These monuments to me, and to what a great guy I am. And then now they're gone. Now a part of me is gone. So you got to be very careful with that. Definitely. So as we're talking about the ladder here, and again, I'm on the here. So I'm on the next page here. I like how he kind of presents it here. He says, "I would prefer not to write too much about this, despite the urgings of my wily passions." Pretty well put. Since there's no doubt that the reason it's one of the shortest chapters in the ladder, absolutely, it's easy to kind of get carried away, even talking about something like brevity, right? So, and he goes on. So, and here we talked about this too. I'm down at the bottom. Oh wow, these pages aren't the same. So, so I'm looking here, it says, about the middle of page 95. Silence has always been the practice of monasticism, Christian and non-Christian alike. And in the Orthodox tradition, it's not quite the same as some of the Roman Catholic traditions, or maybe some of the Buddhists or some of the other ones where they take a vow of silence. You don't take vows of silence per se. That's generally accepted, that, when the monastics, but I mean, some of them, you get them going, they get pretty chatty. But I mean, it's not where you always shut up and you can't talk or something like that. Sometimes you read about some of the different orders, especially in the West, where they don't talk at all, and they'll go their whole time and not speaking and things like that. And I don't know, I'm not saying one way or the other, but I think there's a lot lost if you have people who have monastic experiences and spiritual experiences, if for whatever reason they refuse to impart those on other people. Now, that being said, you also have to be careful that you economize your words, right? That they don't just be like verbal diarrhea where you're just spewing this stuff over and over just to try to fill the air with words. If you don't have any, like they say, if you don't have anything to say, shut up, right? Anything worthwhile to say. And that's what we're looking at here. So he's talking about silence has always been the practice of monasticism, Christian and non-Christian alike, so we don't own that. Why is so much importance attached to silence in all forms of ascetic spirituality? That's a question.
I think it's because you sin.
There you go. Open mouth, sin comes out.
Well, he goes on to explain why he believes it to
Right.
be so, and I think that pretty much sums it up.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more we talk, the less we listen. The more we stop listening, the more we can't hear our own inner voice of our conscience.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and he says here, because the more we speak, the less we listen. The more we hear the sound of our own voice, the more we drown out the silent voice of our conscience. And that is very, very true. If you're doing one of these things, I keep thinking like Jiminy Cricket, like on the Pinocchio, he's got this little cricket chattering away on his shoulder and telling you what to do and all this stuff. But if you think about it still in those terms, if you can't hear that conscious, right? And Father preached about that, the heart, the nous, if you can't hear that because you're too busy talking, which is generally some kind of justification for not listening to the nous, right? Because it'll tell you. I mean, anybody who knows the difference between right and wrong, unless you do have some, psychosis or something like that, you're able to understand that if you do something wrong, it's wrong. But what you try to do is you try to justify it, so that other voice, generally your spoken voice, will spend a lot more time justifying all these bad things you're doing. And also, as we talked about prayer, that was one of the shortcomings, certainly, that we have with our prayer, certainly I have with my prayer, is that I have a tendency to speak more than I listen. So you do your prayers and you say, okay, prayer's done, out you go. Well, did you spend some time just to sit there? And again, I get up, I take my shower, I do my prayers, and then I'm getting all the stuff ready so I can get out the door, so I can get over to work. So there's not a whole lot of time, but what I try to do is, after I do my prayers, is just to sit down for 30 seconds, and don't look at the watch, but just sit there for 30 seconds, and just don't think of anything, and try to chase those thoughts out, because that is really the only time I have to sit and not think of anything. I mean, at work, driving down the road, people say, oh, you use that time. No, you don't. Use that time, hopefully, to be driving and thinking about, what the traffic is doing. Hopefully, if not, I don't want to be on the road with you. But when you're, if you're driving, and for me, the noise, I ride in a van pool, so I'll do my Jesus prayers and stuff like that. But realistically, it's very tough, because just the sounds of the traffic, zoom, 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 and people talking, not a whole lot, sometimes playing the radio or something like that, but all those things are distractions. But in that time in the morning, there's nobody else up, I can sit in the study, I can close the door, and I can actually have some real silence, which is really the only time to experience it. But again, that's just part of the discipline that I need to force on myself, is to do that. I mean, at the point where I do my prayers regularly. So now, here you go. Now you have to do something else. And it doesn't have to be this big, long, thing. It can just be just a few seconds, but sit back and listen to hear the answers to those prayers. I'm sure God is trying to tell me a lot of stuff. If I would just sit down and
If we
shut up
listen.
for a few minutes, I'd be probably surprised what I could hear. So,
My previous priest before we moved here set up for me when I was having trouble with prayer and listening to God, that I would say my prayers while I was in the shower, actually, and then I'd take the time that I would say my prayers and listen to God. So I'd say my prayers in the shower. He said I wasn't being bad.
Right.
'Cause he was telling me to do this. And I would say my prayers in the shower, and then because as a new mother, I just didn't have any time.
oh, yeah.
And then take the time that I would have normally spent saying my prayers and just listen.
And just sit for a few minutes, not do anything.
And just listen.
Yep.
And
You found that helpful?
oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times a lot of things will straighten up in your thinking, when you're reading through the books of the fathers or something, and that doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why they do that. That just doesn't make any good sense.
And then it
And
comes to you?
then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, okay, and that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing, because most of the stuff is developed in silence. If you think about it, the writings of the fathers, all right, the writings of the mothers, even a lot of the better church writing that we have today, most of that happened in silence. Certainly in the monastic world.
Yeah, like 30 years they shut themselves up and then
Sure.
they come out and
Saint Anthony, right, the father of monasticism, 40 years in the desert with nobody around. So all of that stuff was developed in silence, but we read it, contemplate it, and try to live it in noise.
With the TV blaring
With
behind
the TV
us.
blaring while you're sitting there going, looking at the TV and watching Dancing with the Duds or something like that. And you're reading, oh yeah, highlight something. Oh yeah. I mean, come on, really? If this was this kind of knowledge, this godly knowledge imparted as a result of 40 years of silence,
Yeah.
why can't I spend 4 minutes in silence to read it and truly contemplate it? Because that's where it's all going to make sense. And you hit the nail right on the head. That's where it's all going to make sense. And again, you may not have a great epiphany every time you sit down and shut your mouth, but you're certainly not going to have one if you don't. So it's a matter of trying to find that spot and fighting for it. I know that's what Father Paul would always tell me: is fight for it, fight for it, fight for it. Even if
for silence?
yes.
Time to be silent?
Yep, fight for that. Fight for your time for prayer. You have to look at it as an active struggle to get that time in. Prayer and silence. You have to set the time apart and you have to fight for it. You miss it, you forget, or you just don't have time, okay. But tomorrow, the next time, there's no makeup. It's like, well, I'll do it twice as long tomorrow. No. That time is lost. It's a matter of, again,
You fell and you got to get up and go again.
Yeah, exactly. It's living for the moment, because most of the time we're physically in this plane here, getting a little weird here, but we're physically right here, right now, right here. But think about where your mind is. It's probably either back there or up here, thinking about what I need to do next or what I've done in the past. Or maybe relating something and kind of, but to be right in the moment, right now, with whoever you're with, it's almost kind of spooky when you think about it, because we're so used to living in either the future, which may not come, or the past, which is already gone, when all we have is the right now. So if we can fight for that time of silence right now, whatever that right now happens to be, fight for that time of silence. That is living in the moment. That is living in the right now. Something we don't do. And it's so fleeting, right? Right now it goes pretty quick. It becomes the past. So when you think about it in those terms, it's actually something, at least for me, I think about it in those terms, it's like, oh, that's something to kind of struggle towards. just being here right now at that very second. Not trying to get too philosophical or weird about it, but I mean, it really is. And that again, it comes back to what the church fathers and mothers would say, to be able to live in the very moment and to enjoy and to be able to appreciate this moment that you have right now. And
That's what they did.
that's what they did, yeah. And when you think about it, what's forgiveness? What's forgiveness? If you're supposed to forget, pack it away in the past and not bring it out in the future, all you have is right now. And each time you're forgiving in the right now. If not, you're either remembering it or you're slandering or something and getting ready to pull it back out so you can use it for the future, right? So it's difficult for us. I mean, and it doesn't matter what you're talking about, especially at work. I always have to think about what's happening and then to see, to get there, something happened way back here. But very seldom is there any conjoining. They kind of pass each other very quickly, those two lines of back then and in the future, they pass themselves very quickly. And I never really think about the very moment that I'm in right now. And what can I do at this very moment?
Do you find that your moment of silence, when we're talking about taking that few seconds of silence, and for me it was a few moments of silence, that it's hard to do?
Yes.
That it's incredibly hard to
Yes.
wipe out everything from your mind.
Yes.
It took me a month and a half
Yes.
to learn how to get to the point where I could most of the time get most of the stuff out of my head
Yeah.
long enough to be quiet.
It is really tough. And it's something that is easy to lose too. So I think I'm getting pretty good at it, and something happens and I miss it a day or two or something like that. Or I forget about it, or I'm running around or something like that. I have to retrain myself all over again to get back into that habit. They talk about asceticism as being athleticism. I mean, that's what it is. It's athleticism because we're running a marathon or a cage match, whatever you want to call it, but it's something that takes a long time, a lot of endurance, and it's something that we need to train for our whole lives. Just as St. Paul says, you're running a marathon. You're not running a sprint. You're not, it's not like one little event and it's done and, we're finished. We are running this event for our whole life. And hopefully God will give me enough time for me to get it mostly right during this lifetime that he's given me. So, again, remembrance of death. That's something that we need to always remember. And he brings that up too. He says, people who are talky, people who've got to, blather all the time, they've forgotten about death. They've forgotten about the finality, the finite, the finity, I guess, of life. Because they just keep kind of talking like there's no tomorrow, I guess. When you lose that understanding, and if you say that this moment, this right now, is that precious, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to squander it by worrying about the past, or borrowing your worries from the future, from tomorrow? Bible says don't do that too. Don't take your worries from tomorrow. Tomorrow will have its own worries. So again, and that's what Christ was preaching about, to be able to take that in that very moment and think about that and live in that very moment as a precious gift from God.
Because he knew today was coming
Yes.
already, because he's God.
He's God, yeah. And the thing is that for us, we're time bound. That's our problem. We're time bound. We're born. We're made in the image and likeness of God, right? So we have that sovereignty of love. We have that free will, if you will. How we want to do with it, who we want to love, how we want to love God, is really up to us. He can't make us do it. But still, something that we have experienced because of the fall, if you want to use that as a reason, people can come up with other reasons, but because of the fall, is that now we're time boxed from a start and an end. God isn't. God isn't time boxed. So in order to meet God, you have to meet God in that timelessness, in that silence, in that in that non-existence, in that bright darkness, that's where God is met. And we just, as humans, we have a problem finding it, not being afraid of it, and to be able to experience it.
Yeah.
So it's something tough, but it is something that we need to struggle towards our whole life. I'm looking here. He says, consider how many times you or someone you know has made an off-the-cuff remark or a bad joke that has hurt someone's feeling or poisoned a relationship. Now consider how many times you have spent hours happily chatting to people and then walked away feeling empty inside or overloaded with pointless information, along with a sudden urge for peace and a burning need just to get away and retreat into silence. I find that the older I get, the less around a lot of people. To me, it's just a lot of noise. I hate putting it that way. I mean, I like talking.
I feel like I'm wasting precious time.
Yes.
Do you feel like that?
Yes. I don't think relationships.
I feel bad thinking that way, but sometimes I feel like we're just wasting. There's got to be something better we can be doing.
Well, and I think because when we get together, and he'll talk about this with gluttony. I kind of like the way he puts it. But when we get together, we feel that we have to make noise or be around noise. If we're not making it, then we need to have a band or we need to have something else making that noise. And that I wonder how it would be. And I'll tell you, I've never tried this. Is just to get a bunch of people just to sit together and just to sit in a room and not say anything. See how many people could stand that?
I guess it depends on who you asked.
That's true. I was like, it's like I'm starting to freak out because people are starting to get a little creeped out by something by that. But think about that. Just to sit there. And why not? What's wrong with that? We'll sit here, we'll blah, 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 talk about anything and everything that really might be important to us, but might not be a whole lot of information. We just want to share. We want to make that kind of connection. But can there be that same connection in silence? Where people can just kind of sit there.
I don't know if there can be the same connection.
See?
It'd be a
Might
different
be
type
deeper.
of connection.
I think, it might be a very different one, might be deeper. I think there's people who are going to be able to accept it and probably find some benefit from it. But there's other people who are just going to be totally freaked out from it because there is that kind of connection in silence that you're not going to get. Because if you think
it makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, it makes, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's something that we'll talk about when we do our CIA training, too. How comfortable are you with silence? If somebody is talking to you, at you, with you, whatever, and there's just this, the pregnant pause or just the silence, how comfortable are you with just waiting and just kind of looking at the person, nodding or something like that, but just looking at them like that? How comfortable are you with that?
Not very.
Some people it's a hard thing
Make it
to do.
maybe 20 seconds.
Yeah,
Which is 19 seconds longer than
it's like, time's up.
All right, that's long enough.
And for some people, like they say, it's a cultural thing. There's, some cultures will get like this close to you when they talk, or they'll stand right next to you, or it's like they're shouting or something. And some cultures can stand the silence a little better. I think truthfully, men are pretty good at that, just to sit there and not say anything for a long period of time. And it's kind of funny. There's that commercial. I don't know. It's one of those Survivor shows or something like that. But now it's Survivor, father and son. But the point is, they say they're doing this or doing that, and having deep, heartfelt conversations. And this father and son just kind of sitting there looking out over the water and chewing on a stick or something like that, and kind of looking at that. But that's, up at the property the other weekend. That's kind of what we do. We just sit there and just kind of poke the fire and just kind of stare at the fire and say nothing. And I don't think there's much of a connection there, but it's more, actually it feels like the distance is almost greater, but that doesn't feel uncomfortable.
And yet they'll remember those moments more than anything else.
Yeah, probably will. I do. Spending with my sons when we're not sitting there talking about things. I just remember my father, and he was German, and he kind of had some funny things, but if you talk too much, he'd just say, "Why don't you shut up?" I always thought that was so funny. Why don't you shut up? Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. Just shut up. Because he just didn't want to hear you. When you ate, you didn't talk. So it was one of those things where you didn't want to hear any noise at all. Just shut
Oh,
up.
that's not so bad, I guess.
Yeah, and so it's like,
Well, he must have read this chapter before us.
yeah, he was more thoughtful than I give him credit for. But yeah, he just didn't like a lot of noise and a lot of talking. And he didn't talk a whole lot himself. It was just, so, but yeah, so,
Cultural, perhaps.
what's that?
Cultural, maybe.
I think that may have had something to do with it. When he grew up during that time frame, it could have had something to do with it. And it was a big thing where children were seen, not heard. And in his culture, that's the way it was. I mean, it was literally kids didn't eat with the parents or anything like that. They just usually the mom or the oma would come out there and put food and leave you back there, and you just sat by yourself because they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to hear all that noise. So I'm here down a paragraph later. Orthodox spirituality is wholesome asceticism. I like that. Wholesome asceticism. By this I mean our focus is not on a particular sin or faculty. I have known, for example, Christian groups, movements, or projects that focus entirely on one particular sin or passion, be it premarital sex, alcoholism, drug addiction, or abortion. The result is a fanatical obsession with one vice at the cost of all other else. And I kind of read that and I thought, that is kind of interesting, because I know that there are a lot of groups that are out there, whatever it happens to be, whatever the cause is, they have to carry a sign. I remember what was that one guy out of Texas that he hated homosexuals or something like that, and he would go to the funerals, when they had the
That's a
funeral.
whole group of people.
Yeah, it was
They go say terrible things at funerals.
well, what they would do is they would yell. So they would go to the funerals of veterans. Like the kids that they would
I
bring
think they
back.
call themselves a church.
Yeah, they call themselves a church, but they would yell and say, "This is a judgment because of homosexuality. Your son is a sinner," or something like that. And here you have grieving parents and grieving loved ones, and they're over there yelling all that stuff. But that was their big thing. They found that one sin, they thought, of homosexuality, and now they're going to let everyone know about it without thinking about the sin that they're committing there, of first of all being judgmental, but also of just ruining that sort of experience and causing that much more grief to that family. And when I read that, I'm going, what the heck? And you can take anything out there that's a sin or a passion, focus on it to the point where you're going to drive it into the ground, and then that becomes your whole...
Abortion and blowing up clinics.
Yeah,
How does
exactly.
this make sense?
Yeah.
You're killing babies, so we'll kill you for it.
Yeah, and there's also people who will, and on the other hand, I think it's kind of weird that there's people who want to save the baby seal but kill the baby humans. They're all in favor of capital punishment. They're all let them rot in jail and stuff. Well, that's, of course they did something wrong, and they're not innocent maybe, but still, that's a human life. And so if we say we love life, then we need to love all life, and that's a hard thing to do.
Father talks about coming out of the heart or coming out of the head. If you just come out of the head, you'll end up crazy.
Right.
That's kind of what that is.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
There's
And when
no heart involved.
No. And when you think about it, your mouth is attached to your head and not really to your heart. So it always seems like it's your head that's driving your mouth and not your heart. So you need,
Let me write that
yeah. Yeah, so to me, it's like making that connection, which is a really hard connection to make between your mouth and your heart in order to speak love, right? Instead of speaking what's coming out of your head. That's the easy part. And everyone can do it. Everyone does it. Some people do it very well. Or do it a lot. But yeah, so we have to think about that. But yeah, I like that part about wholesome asceticism. And it's not to denigrate the people that are working, heartfelt for all these different causes, whatever the cause is, homelessness, it doesn't matter. There's some very important things, but that's one of the things that I do like about orthodoxy from the standpoint, and some people accuse it of being too complacent. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem type of thing. So they say, well, because you guys aren't out there protesting this, and this, you must like it, you must condone it. No. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It's just that there are other ways of dealing with it, and generally the best way to deal with it is love. When you're out there carrying a sign, Again, that's where the head starts driving the mouth instead of the heart. And someone comes up to you and starts provoking you and starts calling you names or spitting on you or, making fun of your religion or something like that. Then it's very easy when you're putting yourself out in those positions to invite that sort of ridicule, and how are you going to be able to handle it? Oh, I can handle it fine. Well, can the other people? Maybe they can't. And so to bring them into that is absolutely wrong. And then what kind of witness does that look like?
Yeah.
That's the thing that kind of bothers me, because I mean, even when I was with the Protestants, they always wanted to do a life chain. They wanted to do this and wanted to do that. I was never really big on it because I didn't feel that Christianity could really be digested into a bumper sticker or like a cause like that. The cause is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul, and your neighbor as yourself. That is the cause. And so when I see churches out there focusing on other things, whatever the political, like social justice and stuff like that, that tells me that they have saved every soul in the world, and now they're ready to go ahead and find another battleground to fight. That's just kind of how I see it. So if the churches, churchy people, whatever, focus on trying to save people by showing them love, showing them compassion, the same thing Christ did, by being Christ-like in their manners and attitude, and to go out and reach people that way, I think a lot of those other problems, I wouldn't say necessarily will solve themselves, but I think people will see that Christ-like attitude reflected in that work that you're doing, as opposed to out there carrying a sign or supporting a political party or political candidate. All of that can be important because we have to live in this world, but to turn around and say that's the mission of the church, social justice and things like that is, in my opinion, wrong, because the social justice of the church, again, my opinion, probably talking off script here, is to bring the word of God, to bring salvation, to help save people, to let them know that there's a better life out there than what they're living. That's what we need to be doing. But I think the problem is we either act like all that's done, or maybe that's not as fun or something like that, so now we have to find a political cause to rally the troops on. So, anywho, here. He says, as long as we consider the tongue to be autonomous, something that falls outside the scope of Christian ascesis, something independent of God, it will inevitably become a tool of sin. Isn't that something? So when we look at that, when we don't turn that over to God, and to try to work with that as a part, as he says, as part of our asceticism, silence, intelligent silence is part of our asceticism. If we can't turn it over to God and we look at it as being independent, when you think about that, a lot of people say, well, Christ is my Lord, I live for God and all this other stuff. But yet, their tongue, their mouth, their thoughts aren't. They haven't been able to turn that over. Not judging again, but they have not been able to turn that over. And a lot of times, unfortunately, I think it's really bad when you look at it, but a lot of the people are very judgmental, very, pointing at the sins of everybody else with really ignoring their own sin, not from the standpoint of just calling out a sin, but also calling out that person as being bad, and not taking the time to reflect and see, their own sins, their own self. And we got to be very careful of that. And again, that's where the mouth comes in. He's quoting James here. He says, the tongue is a fire, a word of iniquity, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature. Wow. It is set on fire by hell. No man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the similitude of God. Out of the same mouths proceeds blessings and cursings. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. Wow, that's something. And when you think about that, you say, I would never take this hand that I pray with and stab somebody, or slug somebody, or something like that. Yet this...
Or we do it with our mouth.
Right. But with the same tongue that we're singing praises and talking of praises, we can turn around and slander our neighbor and talk, and come up with some pretty rude and nasty things, whether we intend to or not. So, kind of interesting.
The next sentence right there is the best.
Yeah, what does that say?
Silence is the fruit of repentance, mourning, and the remembrance of death.
Oh, death. Now, why would that be the remembrance of death?
Makes you stop and think about what you're doing at this point.
Right? But what else? How much talking are you going to be doing after you die? You can get pretty quiet, aren't you? Repentance, mourning, and the remembrance of death.
Well, I guess that's where the
Quiet
silence
as
of
a
the
tomb.
tomb.
Yeah. And I mean, again, sometimes, I get a little worried because I know when I read this, I'm thinking, how are some people going to take this? Is this coming off as being too morbid or too, but not, I mean, I think if you take it from a healthy standpoint, the remembrance of death, this keeps coming up in every one of the steps and everything we talk about. And that was one of the earlier steps, wasn't it? What was that? That was quite a ways back, the remembrance of death.
Yeah, that was way back. That was before I started coming, I think.
Oh, was it? Yeah, that was, let me see, I can't remember. See, I should have my steps memorized, huh? Let me look in this book.
Look at the cheat sheet.
Yeah, look at the cheat sheet. So, remembrance of death, that was step 6, and we're already up on step 11. Very good, yeah. So 5 steps ago, we were remembering death. And the thing is that everything afterwards, he kept bringing that up, bringing that up, right? It wasn't a topic that went away because we always have that. We should always be remembering that. And again, not from the morbid sense, not from the sense of being afraid to get out of bed or whatever, but from the standpoint of knowing that.
Do you have one of these?
I do.
But from the standpoint of knowing that this world, everything we do is final, right? And unfortunately, we all kind of march to that big end. But yeah, so silence is the fruit of repentance, mourning, and remembrance of death. I like down here, it says, the man who recognizes his sin is taking control of his tongue, while the chatterer has yet to discover himself as he should. Now, he goes on and he talks about, here he kind of breaks it down. If you read in the ladder here, it wasn't, he mentions it, he brings it up, but it's not quite as, expounded as what he's talking about in here, as far as, how does he put it? By contrast, when we are spiritually lazy, we try to fill the vacuum with pointless chattering. The latter pinpoints 3 fundamental causes for such talkativeness. So the first one he has there is what? A bad or relaxed lifestyle. He said, words are easy, whereas prayers, hard work, fasting, study, and restraint require recollection, contemplation, thoughtfulness, and action. So what he's saying, those who talk a lot, or maybe talk about all the things they're going to do or have done, are probably the laziest ones, because if you were spending that time talking about it and doing it, then you wouldn't have probably time to talk about it. When these things are lacking, we spend far too much time sitting around talking. And let us not make the mistake of thinking that constantly speaking of spiritual and theological matters always justifies the passion of talkativeness. For incessantly speaking of such matters while not acting upon them is of little benefit to us. St. Maximus the Confessor aptly wrote, theology without works is the theology of demons. Right? And we like to sit there probably and talk about things and contemplate things, and sometimes that's good. A lot of times I don't like being dragged into it because it's another one of those rabbit holes, and sometimes people are seeking pat answers, or maybe they're baiting you for an argument. I don't know. I don't really know sometimes. Sometimes there are topics that, I just say, well, haven't given that one much thought, and kind of leave it at that. But, again, if we spend that time talking, maybe spend that time planning on how we're going to do something instead of just talking about it, and then hopefully those words lead to some kind of action. right? Hopefully those words lead to some kind of change in our life or to go out and do something, then yeah, those words have been beneficial, they haven't been wasted. But if we just like to kind of sit and debate about things that really have no right or wrong answer, or certainly don't motivate us to do something, then again, he's calling it idle chatter. One of the great mothers of the church, Saint Cassiani, a rather outspoken woman for her day, once said, "I hate silence when it is time to speak." So there's a time to speak, definitely, and there's a time to shut up. So the second thing he says is vainglory. Vainglory is what prompts us to boast and to speak with the intention of impressing others. It is also what prompts us to lie through our teeth about what we know or what we have done or experienced. It says down below the second paragraph, the solution is simple as it is difficult. Humility, all right? Again, pride. So we're looking at these things, a bad or relaxed lifestyle, this is what causes us to be talkative. Vainglory, so we're either lazy, we don't want to do something, we'd rather talk about it, maybe make plans and never act on them, or we just want to impress everybody with what we've done or what we know or what we could do, and again, not do anything about it. The last one, gluttony. I thought this is interesting. It says, the more lax we are in disciplining our bodies, the less restrained we are of words. So something that we are told to learn, especially through the fasting, and this is something too that a lot of times I know back in my previous life when you fasted during Lent, you kind of gave up something you didn't like anyways. Lima beans, I ate lima beans. I'm giving up lima beans for this Lent. Those kind of things. It's not something that is really a stretch. Now some people would say, well, I want to give up smoking or something like that. Well, that's good. You should do it anyways. You shouldn't have to wait for Great Lent. But with the asceticism specified in Great Lent, the whole idea is for you to learn how to train your body, to force your body to go without those things you're used to, and then likewise to be able to spend that time hopefully in prayer and better contemplation, right? And here in silence. So it's kind of interesting. And he's also talking about when people get together to eat, not like at my dad's table, but good reason to talk. So it's a good reason to talk. And again, nothing wrong with that sort of hospitality. But the point is that when that becomes more of a focal point of our lives, as opposed to that trying to seek the silence, and he talks about the gluttony. It's the same thing. We can be a glutton for words. We can be a glutton for anything really. When we're talking, and if we're not taming that just as our appetites.
I found it surprising that he applied it to not only just words, but to drink, but to anything. It could be anything. Gluttony could be anything.
Exactly.
And I found that surprising because I hadn't considered it that way,
Well, so, and it's the same thing too, because when we think about fasting, what's the first thing we think about? Here's all the things we can't eat.
I can't have this, I can't have
right.
that, I can't have the other.
And when you think about gluttony, what do you think about? Oh, this is all the things I'm eating. I'm having too much. It's almost like the opposite. But really, the fasting is not just limited to what you're eating.
Right, you're supposed to give up music, TV, all the external things in your life that are taking you away from God.
Yes. And it is, absolutely. It's that time to actually practice that level of asceticism as much as you can,
Right.
Avoid going to the movies or something like that, renting videos or whatever the thing is. Avoid those kind of entertainments. And I mean, it's only for 40 days, but the idea is, hopefully...
they seem really long when you're, you're trying really hard to give up this stuff.
Yeah, and if you're used to having like a family video night or family movie
right.
night, go out to the matinee on Saturday morning or something like that once a month, and you say, well, we're not doing it. That makes a big hole in your life, and it's like, so what are we going to do with that 2-3 hours that we normally? Well, I wonder what we can do. Oh, I know, we'll run a video, right? No. Maybe we could find something a little bit. Maybe we can read. Maybe we could just spend some time going for a walk, enjoying each other's company. Maybe we can find other ways of applying that, and hopefully some of the lessons that we learn, we can use that to help moderate our lives once we come out of Great Lent. Because we come out of Great Lent, and then it's like, Yeah, it's like, let's go, and we're right back. But that's really not the idea. I mean, that's,
No.
I know that's, well, we come down here and we start eating meats and drink and everything else and cheese and, I think you gotta learn to kind of moderate that too, or else you end up getting sick. But, I mean, it's an idea of saying, hey, you know what, I just went this past 40 days without this, and this. Maybe
I
it's
could go a little longer.
maybe a little longer. Then when I have my Wednesdays and Friday fast, maybe I can do a little bit better on those.
Yeah.
And also, maybe I know we certainly don't practice it nearly enough, is maybe also we should fast from just talking, chatter. Maybe spend some time just sitting down and say, look, go to your prayer corner or go somewhere in the house, one person in one room, one person in the other room, read, pray, sit quietly, no music, no noise or anything like that, and just try to practice that and see if that can be part of the evening routine as well, a wind down. He's talking about here in that next paragraph. He said, it would be a mistake, however, to limit our outwardness of talkingness to the tongue. One can do as much harm with the written word as you can with the spoken word. Nowhere is it more apparent than in the modern forms of digital communication, such as Twitter and Facebook. The aggression and venomous judgmentalism one so often finds in these places, especially on Orthodox discussion forums, is breathtaking. And that is true. It is just really sad, some of the things that we see. Because again, it's that chattiness, whether it's chatting with your fingers or chatting with your mouth, to try to get all your words and your intelligent thoughts out there and written down so that everyone can appreciate. And then next thing you know, here come the trolls, and some people take the bait and just go right after those things, and you just see it getting nastier and nastier. And I usually avoid reading some of the blogs because I don't find a whole lot of value in some of them. The solution to controlling, or rather purifying our speech, and this is interesting, he says, rather than controlling but purifying our speech, whether our words are spoken or written, is purifying the heart. He quotes Luke. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good, and an evil man out of the evil treasures of his heart brings forth evil. Makes sense? For out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks. And he closes with saying, this is the 11th step. He who succeeds in taking it has with one blow cut off the hosts of evils. So I think we'll close at that. We went a little bit over. So any questions, any thoughts? As we close up there on step 11, talkativeness and silence.
I think we'll close with silence.
Don't say that. No, but I think that's a great chapter. So thank you both for enduring me
Thank you.
for the past
Thank
hour. So we'll pick up next week on step 12 with falsehoods. So various kinds of harm can be observed in the passions, and lying is no exception. So one judgment awaits the man who lies out of fear, another the liar who has nothing to worry about at all. One man lies for the sheer pleasure of it, another one for amusement, another to raise a laugh among bystanders, another to trap his brother and to do him harm. So that sounds interesting. Sounds like he might be kind of splitting that here too. Remember, like white lies and good lies and bad lies, those kind of things we tell our kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, that looks interesting. Okay, well, good. Well, why don't we go ahead? We'll close in prayer, and we'll keep going. I got some things I need to do at the annex, anyways. Ow. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. It is truly meet to bless you, O Theotokos, ever blessed and most pure, and the Mother of our God. More honorable than the cherubim, more glorious beyond compare than the seraphim. Without defiling what you gave birth to God, the Word. Through Theotokos, we magnify you. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.